I truly feel honored. I think we're all really lucky in this moment in the Swell community. We get to welcome Katharine Coles as our resident poet. Wow. Okay. Katharine is a poet, a novelist, a professor, an editor. She got her BA from University of Washington, then an MA from University of Houston, then a PhD at the University of Utah, where she is right now. She was a poet laureate. She got a grant from the NEA, a Penn New Writers Award. It goes on and on. I'm going to do a link here, I think, to, I guess there's so many places that cover her, but I really love the Poetry Foundation's website because you can go ahead and tap in and read her beautiful work. And I know we're going to be able to enjoy her work here. Katharine's going to start her own swells, asking us to engage with her about all sorts of conversations. This particular swell is just to introduce her to all of us, to have a quick conversation with her on my end, and then please join, ask her questions, share ideas with her. That's what we're here for, to have someone who's so accomplished and so generous and so talented to be with us on Swell. I'm really, truly excited. Katharine, thank you so much for stepping in and being here and being open to conversation, which is another way to use words. So I want to just ask you to tell us how you are, how words are feeling in your mouth today. Do you want to share some words with us? And just let it flow. And I'm just so happy you're here. Welcome to Swell.
Deborah, I'd like to thank you so much for your really warm welcome, and I'm completely delighted to be involved with Swell. I have so many ways in which poetry is formally involved in my life, through teaching, through publishing, through giving readings, that just to have a chance to chat informally with a group of people is very, very exciting to me. I'm living in Neuss today. We've had jackhammers so far this morning, and if you hear machinery in the distance, please don't be alarmed. But I am really anxious now to have poetry in my mouth, as Deborah puts it. And so I want to start with the idea of the favorite poem. People are always asking me what my favorite poem is, and this is both a good question. You can learn a lot about somebody this way, and not, because who really has only one favorite poem? Poems live inside you, and they emerge when they're ready to emerge. In addition to thoughts about poetry, I'm going to be sharing poems that I think about a lot or that are speaking to me. I want to start today then with Emily Dickinson, who's for sure one of my favorite poets, and a tiny poem of hers that I come back to over and over again just with love and with wonder. It's an instruction poem giving directions on how to make a prairie. It takes a clover and one bee. One clover and a bee and reverie. The reverie alone will do if bees are few. Why do I love this? Let me count. 1, who doesn't really love a really good bee poem? 2, I have to wonder who or what is the it making the prairie? You, the reader being instructed, the poet, maybe God? 3, why all that back and forth about whether it's a clover and one bee or one clover and a bee? What's the difference? 4 through 100. Of course, this poem isn't about bees or clover or making prairies. If you're a good botanist, as Dickinson famously was, you know that if a clover needs to be pollinated by bees to reproduce, i.e. plant sex, you need more than one, or a clover. And you also know that if a clover propagates through the root, as most prairie clover does, it doesn't require bees at all. Either way, beginning with one clover, you'll have a long wait to get a whole prairie, which is where reverie comes in, or poetic dreaming. That gives you the prairie instantly. This is how I want to live my life. This little instruction is Dickinson's reminder to us to let our minds wander like bees among the blossoms, that this dreaming, like a clever tease of a poem, can be a form of productivity and of making. Please let me know what you think. If you have poems to share, I'm going to be very happy to hear them.
Katharine, thank you for waiting for the jackhammers to stop and for this beautiful poem and for adding your voice to this community. You know, I listen to poems a lot here on Swell. There's a beautiful poetry community here and all kinds of people sharing their poems. And you just shared one that is formative to your love of poetry. And of course, I'm going to ask you to share one of your poems now. But before you do, or when you do, can you preface it with something I've always been interested in around, and I write, so I'm not going to put myself into this equation. What do you value about, what do you value in the difference between reading and hearing a poem? And can you teach us a little bit about that? And what happens to a poem when it's spoken? And does a poem that's just read stay in a certain state that you think is not the state it could be ultimately in, which is when it's lifted into the air and spoken and the words have flight? What's your preference, or what's your thought, or what's your pedagogical sort of philosophy of reading versus speaking poetry, whether it's your own or somebody else's?
Thanks so much for the question, Deborah, and also for asking for a poem of mine, which I will read in a minute. The question is really at the heart of the art of poetry. We use language. Language is the technology through which poetry is created and transmitted. And that can happen, as you note, on the page or aloud through the mechanism of the ear, the oral mechanisms. The page is wonderful because it allows us to move back and forth and really think about the poem and what it's doing, and also to see exactly how the poet laid it out. So sometimes with modern poems, you don't even really know if there's a rhyme scheme until you see the poem on the page, because even formal poems are often so colloquial now. A poem that's heard out loud, people are nervous about that because they have a feeling that they are not getting everything in the poem that they should be getting. And my response to that is always to say, well, just relax, because you're getting something that you're not getting from the page, which is something poets work really hard on, and that's the music of the poem and the oral quality of the poem. They want you to have access to that, and most of us actually spend a lot of time working out loud. My husband knows I'm working on a poem when he hears muttering coming from my office, because I'm not only writing the words down, I'm also speaking the words. The third thing that I'm really paying attention to when I write a poem is the image. And of course, it's not an image that can be exactly recreated, even through the mechanism of language, from my brain to a reader's brain. What I want to do is evoke something, hook in to the reader's own understanding of, say, what an apple looks like, in order to create the image of the poem. This poem that I'm going to read is appropriate for the day, at least in Utah, because a week ago I had 3 feet of snow in my driveway, and now the ground is clear and all of the flowers and trees are working so hard to bloom as fast as they can so that they can get their work done for the springtime. It also comes out of a joking conversation that a friend of mine had. Somebody had used the word passeth, not pass, but passeth in our presence. And my friend was kind of making fun of them. And I said, oh, it's a lovely word. And then I went home and I wrote this poem for him, Tom Stillinger, Passeth. The apple doesn't come from nowhere, or for that matter, anywhere. And the tree also counts its days, or counteth, as the case may be, enumeration elevated by grammar, and the world filling itself with never enough jokes. How many sunrises since last frost? how many to go until it's safe to let loose, statistically speaking. The trees want their blossoms there and gone unfoldings not to freeze, want to pull water through their fibers into what transpires and make sunlight raw material. Don't we all want to feel fingertips plump into fruit? If this turn strikes you as fanciful, don't think so much. Only palms full, only sweetness filling your hands, then too muchness you count on, recount, as night lengthens and its shiver takes you.